Hi, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about variety, the thing that brings spice to life, but also spice to our paintings. Another way to think about variety is adding differences into your painting. Things that are different is what draws your viewer's eye. So if there's a whole painting full of dark shapes and you have a spark of light, that's where people are going to look. Let's think about bringing variety into our paintings. You know, one of the first guys that I ever went out and painted with who was very good and I learned an awful lot from, Bill Condit, one of Colorado's great transparent watercolorists. Bill always said that, you know, if the painting bores me, I know it's sure as hell going to bore everybody else. And that's really a deep wisdom, because he realized that if you're bored with something that you've already put so much energy and time into, other people have way less at stake and way less interest to start with. So you're going to need to have enough variety, enough interest to bring them into that painting. Okay, let's start thinking about some of the different ways that we can put variety into our work. Probably one of the first, most obvious ones is size. Something big and something small, something short, something tall. That's what's going to make variety in your work. If I'm going to make a forest, for example, I could show all the trunks of the trees, but let's just think about that. If I make one thick one medium, maybe one super thick, one really a light one, I'm trying to show you that the variety of the size of those trunks, even with a very simple composition of vertical elements, by adding some variety, it's going to be far more interesting. Let's go to our second thing, and that's value, which we talked quite a bit about. You've already done some value practice with your watercolor. Remember when we made light, medium, and dark? I hope you've taken a few minutes to try this a few different times. You can use your newsprint, which will help you kind of get a sense of how much pigment you're putting on your paper. You can use some of your small torn out watercolor pieces so you can practice it a number of times without feeling like you need to be guarding your paper supply. That little house that we made based on just 3 different values shows you how crucial value is. It really tells me about this little structure right here by the way the light is shining on it. It gives me some visual interest. Value is the key. So we're going to go dark, medium to light. We'll have white paper, we'll have medium, and we'll have dark. If you can make sure that you have that range of values in your paintings, they're going to be more successful. We've talked about texture. Starting with just a simple flat wash, you can make it a lot more interesting by spraying it, by scraping it, by adding some of those various kinds of textures that we've discussed. Now, the very first thing that a lot of people would think about with variety is that a painting of interest would have a lot of different colors in it. I think that the crucial part of that for us as watercolorists is to go back and remember that we're going to try to find beautiful analogous colors. We're going to try to let our colors bleed together in different ways on our painting. Let the paint work on your paper. That's going to provide a lot more variety, a lot more interest. What this really means, when I think of the word variety, it's really about differences. The place in your painting that's a little bit different is where people's eye is going to go. And that's the same thing with life. We celebrate differences. We celebrate times when our own life is different, when we go on a special vacation and it's beyond the monotony of our usual schedule. That's the same thing with paintings. The fifth thing that we can provide some variety with is the kind of edges that we have. Edges are where one shape comes up against another shape, or one color comes against another color. Remember when we did our wet in wet, we made this little tree on dry paper, and as we did that, the brush strokes stayed where we put them. The paper was dry, the paint just stopped right where we stopped. That's the way it works with watercolor paper. If you wet it, if the surface that you're painting on is already pretty wet, that paint immediately started to disperse. What that creates is a different kind of edge that's very feathery and very soft. And if we want our painting to have some interest, really is helpful to have some of these soft edges as well as some of these hard edges. If you have only one or the other, there won't be as much variety, there won't be as many differences, and it won't be that interesting. We talked some about negative painting. And this is where we discussed leaving some things unpainted or unsaid, like the snow on the mountain. And by leaving that white paper and not painting it, we actually painted the snow. We're going to talk a lot more about negative painting in a lot of different ways that we can use it as a trick in creating some difference and some variety in our actual painting. It doesn't have to just be snow on the mountain. It could be a tree or a house or a fence. And that sort of element that we put into our painting where it's negative gives a nice counterpoint to all the positive painting that we do, which is all the shapes that we paint deliberately with dark pigment. Finally, I'm going to just say that we could have a lot of variety in the medium that we use. And when I say that, I mean beyond watercolor. So we could add crayons, we could add wax paper or clear wrap or ink or acrylic paint or oils. We can throw things together. We can glue things onto our paper. We can use material, some fabric. All those kinds of things are going beyond the scope of this first part of our course, because those are all called mixed media. And mixed media is certainly a super fun thing because the sky's the limit. Once you start using a lot of different media, you really can add variety in dramatic ways. So, I hope that helps you think about ways to bring variety and differences into your work. We've covered 5 really important basic elements of good design and art. We've talked about composition, value, color, texture, and now variety. There's one more thing I'd like to talk about before we wrap it up. See you on the next lesson. Hi, I'm Bob. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you'll go by my website at watercolorwithbob.com. That's where you'll find an interactive outline of the whole course. You can also share your work with me and your fellow students. One thing I really love about watercolor is how accessible it is. That's why I realized it was important to me to put this course out for free. That said, it would mean the world to me if you would support this work. You can like it, you could share it with your friends, you could subscribe to the channel, you could also visit the gift shop or even make a donation. Thanks so much. See you on the next lesson, and happy painting. A beautiful watercolor is worth all the treasure in the world.